call, but oh, that's new.
Yeah, I hadn't seen
Hi,
that.
welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Jill LaLonde. I'm the Executive Director at OneVillage Partners. We're really excited to have you here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and then to Pete to introduce themselves also as we get started.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hall. I was in the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone 1987 to 89, and we founded OVP kind of 2006-ish, and it's been a fun journey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to some of your questions at the end of the call. I'm Pete Janzen. I'm as of January 1st, the new board chair of OVP, stepping into Jeff's big shoes. Looking forward to visiting with everybody here on the call.
Great. Thanks, Jeff and Pete. So just so everyone knows, I'll give it just real quick highlight on the agenda today. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about our high-level organizational strategy, and then I'll facilitate a Q&A with Jeff and Pete about why it's the right time for the board transition and how we approached it before we then open it up to everyone on the call for questions. So if you have your questions, please save them for a little bit later in this call, and we will get to as many as possible before our end at 12:30. So just kind of a little bit of context on the organizational strategy. So we have put in place a strategy to position us to amplify our impact and to strengthen the foundation for continued growth of OneVillage Partners. And a key part of that, of course, is a sustainable leadership pipeline and a strong leadership pipeline. And so just as we focus on strong leadership in our partner communities as a key piece of our work and model, this is important for us on the governance side as well and what we're doing in the US. And so Jeff, as board chair, has really done so much, as all of you know, to get us where we are today. And we also recognized that we could support healthy organizational growth by adopting board officer terms and creating space for new leaders at the board level. And so a key piece in this work of like setting up for this transition over the past few years has also been getting more Sierra Leonean representation on our board and committees. And one highlight is that we have a newly elected Sierra Leonean vice chair, Shetu Rose, who is going to take the board helm at the end of Pete's term. So we're excited to introduce you to Shetu in the coming months, or as we get closer to her term beginning as well. And we're going to continue strengthening this really important pipeline of Sierra Leonean leaders. And we're working to formalize our partnership with the Sierra Leone community of Minnesota with a mentorship and tutoring program, which we'll share more info about soon as well. So that's just a little bit on kind of context and background info. And I just want to dive right into the Q&A, and I'll start by asking Jeff, in your view, what were the most important reasons that we transitioned the board leadership?
Well, I've been chair for a long time, and the organization was really growing, so it was certainly time to transition. What we do in our work is help to create sustainable communities. We also want our organization to be sustainable and have really professional management, both at the staff level and the board level. So we've been fortunate because we've had a fantastic board from the start, but it's gotten larger. And it just gets tweaked a little bit in terms of skill set each year. And we were at the point where it just seemed very natural to get that vice chair role and a new chair in. And, it takes real commitment. So, we want to make, obviously I was committed from the beginning because I was a Peace Corps volunteer there and I have such a strong connection to the country. And we just had to make sure we had folks who understood the work really well and were really committed and passionate about it and ready to step in. And I think to me, it feels like great timing, and I'm really grateful to have Pete and Shetu in the pipeline and taking the reins, not just in the pipeline, but Pete taking the reins. So awesome.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And Pete, how did you first get involved with OneVillage Partners, and why were you drawn to the work?
Well, I'll start with
Great, thanks, Pete. Yeah, from an inquiry about getting involved to board chair. So thank you for that. Jeff, why did Pete stand out as a great candidate for this role?
Well, I mean, Pete's highly respected and very, very talented and capable leader from his many years at Land O'Lakes, a long time general counsel and then CEO. So tremendous leadership skills. So obviously it was a big step up in board chair for us when Pete was willing to step in and for 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I was wearing a lot of hats, right? I was chief storyteller from the history, and very involved in fundraising. And it definitely was not the best board chair because I didn't have the time to spend a lot of time with the other board members. And Pete's done a great job stepping up to do that, to build those relationships and understand the board and get people in the right spot so that they're doing what they love and supporting the organization with their skills in the best way. So that's a huge step forward for the organization. So obviously his leadership, his passion for Africa and his commitment is really important, because to be board chair, it's a 2-year commitment and 2 years of vice usually before that. So you have to really be committed to our work and our people. And then Pete's really fun. He's fun to work with, and he's a great motivator because he keeps a balance between, it's serious work, but doing it with a joyful heart and some fun along the way, and building strong relations. So we're so grateful to Pete, and I'm personally very grateful to have his leadership with our organization. I just want to add that, I'm still obviously, I don't see this as a step back for me. I'm just as committed in terms of time and passion, but I'll be able to be more focused in the things that I'll do with the organization, leading the trips. The folks in the village are my family from living there, and I love them like I love my family. So I'll be staying very involved with them as they continue to work towards prosperity in their own lives, partnering with us. So looking forward to just a little tweak in my role. So thanks, Pete.
And thanks, Jeff. And Pete, final question for you. How do you approach board leadership, and what would you like to accomplish as board chair?
Well, let me start off by, Jeff, thanks very much for those kind of comments. And it's important that everybody knows that this is just a little bit of shift. I mean, as Jeff said, he's fully engaged and will always be fully engaged. This is the organization that he founded, and I couldn't be more thrilled. And it was one of the things that I probably wouldn't have been willing to do the chair role if I didn't know that Jeff was going to stay fully engaged, because he brings so much to the party that I can't bring. So having Jeff continue to be engaged and providing that leadership is really important to me, and it's important to the whole organization, and as well as the villages in Sierra Leone. So Jeff, thank you for all your continued leadership and engagement. Look, what my goal is, the very first goal is, I don't want to screw this up. Jeff, has built this great organization. We just celebrated our 10 years as a formal entity. And, anytime you step into this new role, your first and foremost goal, if you approach it with any degree of humility at all, is, hey, just don't screw this up. And I know that's it might sound like a low bar, but it really isn't, because we've really been doing some great work. So that's the first bar that I'm going to set. The next bar is kind of what Jeff talked about, is how do we make this smooth transition? And, I look and I have what my skill sets might be, or where I want to focus might be a little bit different than where Jeff was focusing. And I talked about being a lawyer, but more than that, when I moved more from a lawyer to a business person, it was all about administration and people leadership and things like that. And so I see the value that I can bring to OVP is, hey, how do I work with Jeff and Jill and set strategy, because strategy is really important. We'll get to that. But how do I help with board leadership? We've got a great board. As Jill mentioned before, we've had Amelia for a while. And she's been doing a great job on the board, but how do we get more people of Sierra Leonean descent on our board? And I'm thrilled that we've got Shatuan as our board vice chair, and she'll assume the board chair role in January of 23. So how do we continue doing things like that? How do we help Jill and her staff continue to bring in more Sierra Leoneans into our staff leadership? So those are the kind of things that I really want to focus on. How do we help Jill around strategy, but how do we have the best board we can possibly have? And we've got a great board, and how can I work with the board to try and let them all be the best board members they can be? So, that's another step that I'm really, or goal that I really want to have. I also want to get over to visit our villages. That was on my list for 2020, and we all know what happened with 2020. So I've been to a lot of different places in Africa, but Western Africa is not one that I've made it to yet, and particularly haven't made it to Sierra Leone. So I'm looking, once we can get a trip scheduled up, to get over to Sierra Leone and have a chance to meet some of the people whose faces I've seen either in videos or on calls or things like that, and really get to know what we're doing that much better. And then finally, we've talked, I mentioned strategy a couple of times, and that's really something that I'm passionate about. And we've had 10 great years. And now I want us to think 5 to 10 years out from there. We've grown nicely. We hit $1 million in terms of money raised for a calendar year in 2019. How do we look forward and really push ourselves beyond that? Because the more we raise, the more we can help our villages in Sierra Leone thrive. The more good things that we can do. And the staff has been doing a great job with both our individual donors as well as our institutional donors, putting us in a position where we can take that big step forward. But how then do we take that big step forward where not only are we looking at doubling or tripling or quadrupling the revenue that we raise, but then how do you employ that revenue? How do you do the right things? How do you have the right strategy that's community led in Sierra Leone? So how do we dream big and then put ourselves in position over the next 5-10 years to do exactly that? And so those are some things that I'm also focusing on. So kind of a long-winded rambling answer, but gives you a sense of where I come from and what I hope for OVP.
Okay, well, thank you, Pete, and thank you, Jeff. That's those are the questions that I had, but I would like to turn it over to others on the call. If you'd like to ask a question, we're a small enough group, you can just unmute yourself, or if you're more comfortable chatting the question in, then I can facilitate the chat dialogue.
Or if you don't have questions, Jeff and I can just do a duet. I mean, that might prompt some questions to avoid that.
Or concerns.
I do want to say that
Hi, Mia.
hi, Pete. So as everyone know, I think Jill mentioned that in the beginning that I am the Sierra Leonean born and one of the board members. When I joined, it was just me on the board, and I'm glad that we now have 4 board members and then Sylvia on one of our committees. And so I really love to get that Sierra Leonean aspect of it to make sure that we are staying true to our core values and our strategy in helping the communities in Sierra Leone. So I do want to say thank you to Uncle Jeff. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you to Jeff and Pete. See, that's the interesting thing. I say Uncle Jeff and then I say Pete. So I have to change that. So, but thank you both for the hard work, along with the staff, along with all the board members and the ones in Sierra Leone, and specifically our donors as well. And I think with the added new chair and co-chair with Shaitu and Pete, I think we'll definitely continue the work of making sure that our ultimate goal of having sustainable communities that we work and serve do get to that point. And Pete, once you get to Sierra Leone, you would understand why OVP does what we do, and that the people are resilient, the people are loving and just happy with the very little that they have. And I just hope that we'll continue to do that. I don't have a question. I just want to say something. That's all. Thank you, everyone.
Comments welcome as well.
Great, Amelia. We're so grateful to have your help. We always, we started with Rebecca Johnson on the board, so we've always had a Sierra Leonean on the board. But we have several thousand in the Twin Cities from Sierra Leone, but they're all working so hard. And, it's hard. We try to find the folks who have that extra time to be on the board, because we want them, if we have board members, we want them to be able to come and be involved. And so with your help, Amelia, we've really been able to expand that, and we have to keep pushing deeper in our partnership with the Sierra Leone community of Minnesota, so we can all together help with, as you call, Mama Salone, Mama Sierra Leone. Where?
Did someone comment on COVID and Sierra Leone and any government restrictions and sort of what you see for the next year?
I mean, I can answer that. I mean, it's ever changing, and right now, and Kate's here too, so maybe I'll pass it. It looks like she's frozen, but Kate's one of our staff in Sierra Leone. right now, the cases have been spiking. It's a third wave. There are some restrictions on the size of gatherings and a curfew, but it's somewhat, the restrictions are not as intense as they were last year when COVID first hit. And so it's really hard to say what it means for the next year, just because it changes so much, of course, like it does everywhere. But I think the emergence of the Delta variant and then community spread in Sierra Leone are incredibly concerning. And we've suspended field activities for the time being. We keep assessing on a weekly basis when it's safe to get people back out, but we're limiting our field exposure to communities to COVID training and information sharing. And Kate, is there anything you want to add to that for the current context?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, just first of all, so great to see everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces here from those who came to visit our partner communities last year. So anyways, great to see everyone. But just to piggyback off of what Jill said, yeah, there has been, you know, a spike in cases. It does look like the case count is starting to go down a bit, but there's also a lot of concern that cases are undercounted. So it's really just hard to tell. As Jill mentioned, we've limited our field activities, but starting later in this week, we are going to be doing kind of small, like refresher trainings with small groups of our like program participants and leaders and community members in all of our partner communities from Wednesday to Monday, just to give them updated information about the variant, information on vaccine and vaccine access and that sort. So we're definitely, you know, at least thankful that we have like that ability to be able to work with our communities on that level.
Thanks, Ken. I would just add that for poor folks in poor countries, the biggest impact is economic. Food prices are up dramatically, and healthcare is always harder to find sometimes when there's like a COVID situation, because people are scared to go to the clinic or the hospital that they're going to get COVID. So from what I've heard from my friends too, it's just that food is so expensive, it makes life so much more difficult. So even if they don't get COVID, their life is impacted in a really challenging way. So we're just doing everything we can. And Kate, thanks to all of you on the front lines for doing everything you can to help our communities through this tough time.
How about vaccines? Is that becoming more available?
There are limited vaccines. Most of our staff have been vaccinated, so there are vaccines in country, but there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy as well that we hear, and a lot for real historical reasons, that people are apprehensive about taking a vaccine that's produced internationally and that hasn't been tested for years. So that's I think, and maybe Amelia is nodding. Would you agree that it's less of an the access is a challenge, but the bigger challenge is the hesitancy?
Definitely. You see all the, you know, with social media and the access to WhatsApp and other means of communication and just the hearsay, a lot of people are hesitant to take the vaccine, and it's been a challenge. And I think that's the reason why the numbers are spiking. The Delta variant is out there. But sometimes, or one thing that comes to mind or that gives me some form of hope is that the way the country had dealt with the Ebola crisis, maybe, just maybe, will use some of those experiences to help disseminate the proper information and encourage people to take the vaccine, or at least continue with the distancing and the masking and the hand washing to reduce some of that spread. So hopefully there'll be some better turn in the near future. But yes, just the history with vaccines is the challenge today.
Thanks, Amelia. So we maybe have time for one or two quick questions. And also, Shetu, hi, we were just talking about you. So this is Shetu Rose, our vice chair. I'm glad you could join and say hello.
Sorry, I've been in meetings all morning. Sorry.
No,
Hi.
no problem. Just wanted to introduce you since we talked about you already. Are there any other questions? Anyone else, Frank?
Well, I'll just pipe in here. Now, Jill and I had a chance to chat for a little bit here the other day about possible pathways for OVP's expansion. And is there any, and your annual report is just terrific. It's a great, concise summary of what all you're doing with excellent photography and great, good numbered summaries and things like that. Are there any areas above and beyond what you're doing right now that are particularly being looked at as areas to expand? And obviously what you're doing a lot of right now is great work in the fields of nutrition, water, education, and microfinance, things like that. Maybe are there any new areas that look particularly promising, or are you still focusing mostly on what you're doing and trying to expand that?
Good question, Frank, but that's a big one. But I guess I would say we're community led, right? Of course. So what we can provide as partners is this platform for communities to make decisions and to lead development in areas that are important to them. And so where I see our growth in a lot of ways is really the deepening of our impact with our current partners, alongside expanding to work with new communities. And so what we've been building up through our LEAD program with opportunities for regional collaboration, regional sharing, I think is going to open a lot of new opportunities for OneVillage Partners to engage in different impact areas. Because at a community level, of course, like a public health intervention like a latrine makes a ton of sense. And that is a community specific intervention. But when you start looking regionally and you start looking at the collaboration with local government and looking, district wide, I think we can see a lot more projects with like quality of healthcare, quality and access to education, looking more at like value chain development. I mean, there just kind of opens up a whole, like a broader area of possible projects when we're looking at a larger just geographic area and more people involved. So we are almost out of time. I'm sorry that I feel like Frank, we can talk more because I have so much to share and bounce ideas around with you as well on that. But before we end, I just want to say we're going to be sending out a link to this town hall. So please share it. You will receive that by email. We're also going to send out a survey. And so it's really important to us to learn and provide engagement opportunities that are meaningful to you. So I just would encourage you to fill out the survey and give us your honest feedback on the session that we're having today. And then finally, we are very excited to have some in-person and virtual opportunities to engage in the next couple of months. So we officially have our real estate breakfast coming up on Wednesday, August 11th. And then Partner Breakfast is back for 2021. We are doing both an in-person and a hybrid, a virtual event for that. And that is on Wednesday, September 8th. So please save the dates. We'll be sending out more information and we really hope to see you at one or both of those events. So thank you all so much. Really fun to see everybody, and we will officially end and stop recording. Thanks for your time today.